people, so I particularly appreciate that. I want to first off recognize, because you can hear it outside, and for the past months, Roger knows this well, first it was thousands, then it was tens of thousands and more, that day after day stood outside of my Capitol office window, making the same sort of noise you hear out there. And for those individuals, at least those that are from Wisconsin, and increasingly we saw more and more from from outside of Wisconsin. In fact, as we drove in, we saw people coming out of cars. I saw a lot of Wisconsin plates, but I saw Illinois plates, I saw Minnesota plates, I saw other plates as well. And Roger and I know that in the Capitol we saw a lot of folks from Illinois and New Jersey and Nevada and other places. But for those from Wisconsin, and I say that with absolute sincerity, they have every right to be heard, those protesters. They have every right to be heard. But let me make this even more clear. The countless millions of taxpayers in this state have even more right to be heard because the voice It is an honor to be back. The last time I was here for dinner, I was off in that section, cornered off. It's nice to see the whole place full. So Edie and Jim and Jerry and everybody, thank you for having the courage to follow through and the commitment to have it here. We appreciate that. We're going to come back. I'm going to come back in my Harley and have dinner in the summer here as well. And I got to tell you, you all know this, who've known me for years, but people often kid down in Milwaukee and Madison, they look at the politicians in there and they say, oh, these guys don't know north of 29. Well, let me tell you, I know not only north of 29, I know north of 8, I know north of 2, and I know, and Craig, you'll appreciate this, I know that Superior is not the furthest north. I've been to Cornucopia, and I know where it is here. And I know you got good leaders here, because I've known Sean and Rachel Duffy for years, and there's none finer in this country. Not just because of what Sean's doing in Washington, but I've seen their family, I've seen the commitment, I've stayed back across the way in their house with the Millers before, and seen the wonderful kids that they have, and the impact they've had on this community, and the impact Sean and Rachel together are having on this district. And I just want to tell you, we appreciate you in Washington. You're fighting a tough fight for those of us here. I just want to say one other thing. He's not from Bayfield or Ashland County, but you might as well adopt him tonight because there are, well, Sean's cute too. I won't go into that. I'll take your word on it. I think Rachel thinks that as well. I always say when I'm at the airport, people confuse me and Paul Ryan. I always say we look a little bit alike, but my wife thinks Paul Ryan's cuter than I am, so that's a whole other ballgame. But you need to adopt one other person that we're going to recognize a little bit later, but Roger Rivard from Rice Lake is one of those people that has been unbelievably courageous in this battle. You know, we talk oftentimes about the concept of standing with people. Roger literally stood with me, and I mean physically with me, a month ago yesterday, when I stood in the conference room in the governor's office in the Capitol and announced, after having given a briefing to the Democrats, Democrat Senator Mark Miller, who later left, and Democrat Representative Peter Barker, and told them what was in the budget repair bill and why we needed to do it. And then a handful of lawmakers had the courage to stand with me then, and thankfully a whole lot more did in this past week. But Roger was one of those from the very beginning who had the courage to do what was right. And the taxpayers of this state do as well. Now, I want to tell you a couple things. You know, first off, I look around this crowd and I see so many faces of people who helped us on our way to victory on November 2nd. I just want to say thank you on behalf of Tonette and I and our family right off the bat. Thank you for what you did in the months and years leading up to that November 2nd election. I see people from all parts of this year. I see Bill Johnson, who's helped us out through the party. I've seen leaders from one end of the state, one end of the North Woods in particular, over and over again, and I can't thank you enough. Cannot thank you enough. But remember, it was only 4 months ago. Some days it seems like 4 years ago. But 4 months ago, we had a victory. Remember that night, for those of you who watched or were there, on the podium, instead of putting one of my banners up, instead of putting a brown bag or a sign that said my name on it, we put something else up there. See, my campaign staff wanted to put one of those banners up. I said, no, we need to make up something special. It looks kind of like this bumper sticker. It said, Wisconsin is open for business. I put this on the podium was because that victory wasn't about me. It was about the taxpayers of the state who stood up and said, we want our government back, we want our state back, we want to get Wisconsin working again, and that's exactly what we started on November 2nd, 4 months ago. And we didn't wait. We didn't wait until the swearing in. In fact, in the first couple of weeks of the transition, I said to the Obama administration, we don't want and can't afford an $800 million boondoggle of a so-called high-speed train between Milwaukee and Madison. We need to fix our roads and our bridges in this state. And then literally minutes after taking the oath of office, I put up my hand and took the oath of office. I gave a speech, the address to the Capitol, and then I literally walked back to my office. And I handed the new majority leader of the Senate and the new Speaker of the Assembly the official call for a special session. And we called them in a special session on jobs, on an aggressive agenda to get our state working again. And I remember about a month later, a reporter from the Associated Press came in to write a story that ran all across the country. And the guy asked some pretty good questions. He said, why is it that a month in, before most governors, before most lawmakers had even found their offices, you guys have already passed tax relief, you already passed regulatory reform, you already passed the toughest tort reform in the country, you've already changed your economic development strategy, you've created a public-private partnership in commerce, you've done all these things in the first 4 or 5 weeks. Why did you act so quickly? I said, it's real simple. When I traveled this state for about 1.5 years, almost 2 years, I viewed it as a job interview. I interviewed you, the people of the state of Wisconsin. And I said along the way, just like someone interviewing to be the CEO of a company that faced a fiscal crisis, I said, you need a governor who's going to act and act immediately. And so when I got in office, I didn't wait 1 year. I didn't wait 6 months. I didn't even wait a month. I said, we have an economic and fiscal crisis in this state, and it demands action now, and that's exactly what we've done in the first months in office. The good news is we're already seeing progress. We started talking about it in November and December. We did what we said we were going to do starting on January 3rd and the days thereafter. And last Wednesday, the Department of Workforce Development for the state released numbers for the first month of the year. And lo and behold, unlike nearly any other state across the country, we saw a net increase in jobs in the private sector. More than 10,000 new jobs in the private sector. Started. We saw the state unemployment rate drop to 7.4%. That's much lower than the national average, although it's still too high, but we're still just getting started. Now, we're continuing to tackle the economic crisis in the state. And even though you wouldn't know it by the media today, you wouldn't know it by the protesters, but in those first weeks, we took action where all the Republicans, the one independent, and many Democrats joined with us because they knew it was the right thing to do. Because the job in this state isn't a Republican job or a Democrat job, it's a Wisconsin job. And you know what? We're going to continue down that path no matter what else happens, no matter whether those 14 come back or don't, or some of them do, some of them don't. We're going to finish the job we were elected to do, and that is to get this state working again. Now, the other big challenge we face, and we identified it all throughout the campaign, was the fact that in this state we not only have an economic crisis, we have a fiscal crisis. And the truth is, we've had it for years. We're broke. We're on the verge of not being able to pay our bills in this state, and like nearly every other state across the country, we're broke. The problem is, for years in this state, the past leaders, particularly the last governor, failed to tell the truth about where the state was headed financially. So a month ago, I stood up and said, we're broke, we need to act now, we need to fix this budget for the remainder of this fiscal year, and we need to make decisions that prepare us to put us in better shape for the future. What we decided to do was to make a commitment. I thought about this when the Duffy kids were up here. This is so fitting. We decided in our action that we announced a month ago to make a commitment to the future so our children don't face the dire consequences we face today. That's what this is all about. That's ultimately what